This is a small Russian republic that has produced the best fighters in the world. This is where legends are made. This is Dagestan. I'm sure you've heard of this place before because over the last 20 years, this small republic has produced some of the greatest UFC champions the world has ever seen. Dagestan is the place that gave us the undefeated Khabib Nurmagomedov, the current lightweight king Islam Makhachev, as well as other great fighters like Abdul Razak, Magomed Bibulatov, and the list goes on. But why does this small republic produce so many great fighters? Well, let's find out. Welcome to the channel. Now, first things first, let's talk about how big Dagestan actually is, because I bet most people don't have a clue. If we take a look at the entire country of Russia, which is the largest country on the planet. Then we zoom into the Caucasus region. Right here is where we find Dagestan. If we zoom in even more, we can see that Dagestan is a small republic located on the west of the Caspian Sea. So now that we know where Dagestan is, let's answer our question. How could a place so small produce so many legendary fighters? Well, to answer this question, we need to go all the way back to 1987, because this year was very important for the future of fighting in Dagestan. See, in 1987, the Soviet Union held an event called the Spartakiad, which was one of the biggest multi-sport events for athletes within the Soviet Union. It was kind of like the Olympics for the Soviet Union. So the Spartakiad was held in Baku, Azerbaijan, and that's where a young man by the name of Khabib's father, Abdulmanap Nurmagomedov, he was coaching the Dagestani wrestling team at the time. Now, despite being a coach, Abdulmanap had actually competed in the Olympics himself, representing the Soviet Union in 1976 and 1980, and it was at this tournament where Abdulmanap discovered something. Saw the raw talent that existed in his region, and he knew that if these athletes were properly trained, they could become world champions. And he knew what needed to be done. So after returning home, Abdulmanap began training all of the kids in his village, teaching them the art of combat sambo, which is basically a mix between judo, wrestling, and striking. And the crazy thing is, from the moment he started training these kids, he basically became the godfather of fighting in this region. You see, when you talk about Dagestan today and fighting, everyone knows the name Abdulmanap Nurmagomedov. He is considered the father of modern fighting in Dagestan, and it's because of him that we have seen so many great fighters come out of this region. But let's go back to 1987, because this was also the year that Khabib Nurmagomedov was born. And right away we can see the influence of his father. You see, the same year that Khabib was born, his dad opened up a wrestling gym called the Patriot Sports Center. And since there were no youth classes available, young Khabib would just train with the adults. And if you think that's impressive, it gets even better because Khabib was basically raised inside this gym. In fact, I'll quote Khabib's manager here. If you wanted to meet Khabib when he was younger, you had to visit his father at the gym because that's where he lived. He slept at the gym, and he wasn't at school, he was at the gym. So yeah, as you can imagine, this guy literally grew up inside of a wrestling gym. And his training regimen was absolutely insane. See, when you're training to be a wrestler, most wrestlers will focus on one or two disciplines depending on their style. So for example, in freestyle wrestling, ULL focus on either taking your opponent down and keeping them down, or you. LL focus on trying to avoid being taken down while trying to outscore your opponent. But Khabib's dad wanted him to master everything. So essentially, his father's goal was to make Khabib the most well-rounded fighter in the world. And this guy actually did it. So we can see this mentality in Khabib's fighting style. Because when you watch his fight, it didn't matter if the fight took place in a wrestling match, a judo match, a sambo match, or a mixed martial arts match. He would dominate in all of them. In fact, his record was 29 wins and 0 losses, which means he was arguably the most successful combat sports athlete in history. And it really wasn't until he retired that we realized the true extent of his greatness. Because right after Khabib retired, the UFC decided to create a lightweight title specifically for his rival, Conor McGregor. But that's besides the point. What I want to show you guys is that when you train your entire life to do something, well, the results can be truly incredible. Because as we can see, Abdulmanap had already established a wrestling gym back in 1987 when Khabib was born. Then he continued to grow this gym as we saw with the documentary, and as a result of this, he became a legend in Dagestan. And as we mentioned before, he is known as the father of modern fighting in Dagestan. But unfortunately, he passed away back in 2020 from complications due to COVID. But before he passed away, he had already created a pipeline of fighters coming out of his region. And the one who took the throne after Khabib was his own student, Islam Makhachev. You see, if you didn't know, Islam Makhachev is also from Dagestan, and he is also a product of Abdulmanap's wrestling gym. In fact, Islam is basically the son that Abdulmanap never had, because Islam's actual father, Agamadi, he was one of Abdulmanap's best friends. And so he asked his friend to train his son, which is how their friendship became so close. And so, when Abdulmanap sadly passed away, Islam went on to win the lightweight title and continue the legacy of Dagestani fighters winning titles. Because you can really see that Islam's rise to the top was directly influenced by his mentor. As we can see, Abdulmanap was already training Islam when he was a young kid. Thanks to this, Islam was able to become one of the best fighters in the world. In fact, I'll quote Islam here. "Without my father and Abdulmanap, I wouldn't be here talking to you now. They believed in me, especially my father. He always said, you can beat anyone in the world." I remember as a kid hearing this. I was maybe 8 or 9 years old, but these words stayed with me. I never forgot them. And you can really see this mentality when you watch Islam fight, because Islam's fighting style is exactly the same as Khabib's, and that's because he learned from the best. But if we take a look at Islam's record, we can see that he is currently 23-4, and although he has lost 4 times, you have to keep in mind that he has fought some of the best fighters in the world. In fact, his last loss was against Charles Oliveira, who was the lightweight champion at the time, and Islam simply took the title away from him. So yeah, I think you can agree with me when I say that Islam is the true embodiment of Dagestan fighting spirit. But another thing I wanted to mention is that the reason why there are so many great fighters coming out of this region is because of this style that they use. As we mentioned before, the main goal for wrestlers from Dagestan is to get inside their opponent's guard and start connecting on those powerful takedowns. And once they do this, it's basically lights out. As we can see from this compilation, these guys train to take fighters down and dominate them on the ground. And the reason why this works so well is because when you wrestle your whole life, you become so much stronger. I mean, just look at Khabib. Even though he was not that tall, he was extremely muscular and strong. And so with this style of fighting, it makes sense why so many fighters from this region are successful. But I guess you guys are wondering, well, if Dagestan is such a small place, where are all these great fighters coming from? And this brings us to the last point of the video. You see, over the years, the sport of wrestling has been deeply ingrained into the culture of Dagestan. In fact, in 2012, the head of the republic officially declared that every family in the republic must have a wrestler. And because of this, we have seen dozens of great wrestlers come out of this region. In fact, I'll quote the head of the republic here. "Our boys live for the sake of wrestling. From the day they are born, they think about wrestling. All their actions are subordinated to wrestling. They sleep and dream about wrestling." And because of this, it's not surprising that Dagestan is considered the most feared grappling region on the planet. But that's it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please leave a like. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.